Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. I'm Wendy and I'm so happy you're here. For our first project, we're going to be using a wood finish charger, 2 plastic fence pieces, and some jute twine. So the first thing I'm going to do is slide those little pins into the slots and attach them on one side. And then I'm going to take my utility knife and make sure that it's a super sharp piece, and then just cut off one of the legs where the two come together. And then on the other side, I'm going to cut off one section of those little loop-de-loops. So I'm going to cut it on the left side of the one piece that's right next to it. That doesn't make sense, but you see what I'm doing here because I want to leave on that entire rounded part at the end. And then on the other side, I'm going to get rid of that attaching mechanism. And then I'm going to put them together temporarily using a chenille stem. And so I received a sweet PERKY prize from a viewer, Anita Hicks from Red Oak, Texas, who sent me these super pretty wood tone chargers. So thank you, Anita. And I'm finally getting to use it. And once I cut off that excess piece, it fits perfectly between these two pieces of fencing. There's actually a little opening at the bottom of the fences, and so the edge of my charger slips perfectly inside there, so I don't even need to glue it or do anything else to keep it in place. So once I get it all put together, I'm going to take it outside to my painting station, and using my Krylon flat white paint, I'm going to get that all nice and perfectly white. So once everything is dry, I'm going to take my jute twine and wrap that around the two places where my fencing comes together, just to give it some more security. And then to make it look more cohesive and look the same all the way around, I'm going to do that on the smaller bars in between. And I'm going to do that on every other one. And one thing I did learn as I was doing this process is where I tied the knot in the jute twine at the top, if you let that cut piece of twine go all the way down to the bottom, once you wrap down to the bottom, you'll have something to tie it to, and that makes it a lot easier. So now I'm going to take my lighter and I'm going to get rid of all of the fuzzy wuzzies from that jute twine, and then I'm going to take some Waverly chalk paint in ink and I'm going to get that all nicely distressed so it looks like my wrought iron is chipping and wearing away and super distressed. And here it is, all finished, and I am just so excited about how this turned out. I've kind of been on a mission trying to figure out what to do with these fence pieces, and every time I go to the Dollar Tree, I see them just staring at me, kind of making fun of me because I can't think of anything to do with them. But I think this just hit the mark. I think it looks like real metal. It's super heavy duty, and I should have shown you what it looks like without anything inside of it, because the wood grain on the charger inside really shows up and is so pretty. You could actually put a really heavy plant in here. I have this pickle jar from a DIY that I did in another video, and I mean, this guy is really solid and is holding some heavy duty stuff. So I love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. For our next Dollar Tree DIY, I'm going to be using 3 of the wooden boxes, 3 lavender votives, some pretty lavender and white cotton twine, some floral foam, and a bunch of flowers in different shades of pretty purples and lavenders. And so the first thing we're going to do is pull out that inside box because we're not going to be using those in this DIY. And then I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in white and just paint those boxes on the outside and on the top rims. And then I'm going to put my boxes together using my E6000 and my hot glue, and I'm going to press them together as tightly as I can so that there's no gaps in between. And these boxes will fit together better in certain directions, so play around with them and move them around until you get the tightest fit. So now I'm going to take my floral foam and I'm going to cut that down into the right size to fit at the bottom of my boxes, and then I'm going to glue that down, and then I'll take another piece and put that just in the middle so that my votives can sit on top of there and be a little bit higher. So now I'm going to start filling my crate with some greenery from Walmart, and this is the Mainstays boxwood. And I looked online and it says that they're 97 cents for a pick, but I feel like they were $2.48. So I don't know if they're just on sale or if I did pay only 97 cents. Either way, it's still super affordable, and I always keep these on hand when there's no Dollar Tree greenery that I really like. So I'm just going to place those all the way around, and then I'm going to take some lavender stems, cut those apart, and start adding them in. And I was so excited to find 4 different shades of this lavender, and I really like the leaves that they're on too. So I'm going to use all 4 of those different colors. And then I'm going to take these amaranthus stems, and I'm going to cut these apart and put 3 on one side and then 3 on the other, so that they just kind of fall out and are flowing out of our little box. So now I'm going to take my cotton twine and I'm going to wrap that around my base about 4 times and then tie a sweet little bow in the front. And they had these in all different kind of pretty pastel colors. So I'm really excited. I got, I think, one of each. So I'm excited to use them in upcoming projects. So then I decided I wanted to give my piece a little bit more height. So I found this smile sign that was also from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just using a bamboo skewer to attach to the back in 3 places. And then I'll poke those right into all 3 of my boxes. And I decided to just leave this the raw wood that it came in, and I think it goes so pretty with the lavender colors. And here it is all finished, and I love how this turned out. I think it's so happy and makes me smile. I love lavender. I love purple because I'm a Donny Osmond fan from back in the day. And so I just think this is so perfect for spring. Lent is coming up, so purple is the color that signifies Lent. And I get a lot of people who ask me about what Lent is, and it's just the 40 days before Easter that commemorates the time Jesus spent in the desert before he started his ministry. So anyway, I love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. For our next Dollar Tree DIY, we're going to be using this 12-inch wood blend wreath and then some more of those pretty purpley lavender stems. And so the first thing I did was just cut off the bottom parts of my stems, and I'm going to try and stick them in between the wood pieces of my wreath form. And then I'm going to take some paddle wire and attach those to give it more security. And I'm going to go in between those little sticks so that you can't see the wire from the back side. And I'm first going to use all of the medium colored lavender stems, and then I'll go back in with some white stems, and then finally I'll use some of the darker lavender stems and cut those apart and place them intermittently throughout my wreath. So I ended up using a total of 7 medium colored lavender stems, and then 5 of the white ones, and then 3 of the dark lavender stems. And then once I have all of my stems in place, I'm going to cut off that excess paddle wire. And I really like these stems because the green leaves are that soft, pretty color, and they make the rest of the wreath really fill up and look nice and full. So now I'm going to take some of Dollar Tree's burlap and lace ribbon, and I'm just going to wrap that around the top part of my wreath and then fold over the raw edge and hot glue that down so it's nice and clean. And here it is all finished, and I just love how the shape of the lavender flowers just lay on top of one another and they kind of stick out around the edges. I have a thumbtack holding it in place on this beautiful old window that I got from my uncle's backyard, and it is just so pretty next to the smile arrangement that we just made. So this just makes my eyes so happy, and I hope you like it too. For our next Dollar Tree DIY, I'm going to be using a long wooden sign, 4 mini terracotta flower pots, 4 plastic bracelets, and I don't end up using the ribbon or the puffy dots. So the first thing I did was got my sign ready, and I'm just going to pull off the Happy Fall sign. You can obviously use any of the signs that you can find at Dollar Tree, but the longer the better for this project. So I'm just going to pull out the staples and the hanger that was on there, and then I'm just going to sand those holes down so that you don't see them as much. And then to make it a little bit cleaner on the back, and I don't have to use my paint to cover up the scarecrow, I'm just going to use my CRICUT spatula to pull that paper up. And if you just do a little bit at a time and just work your way up, you can get that entire piece of paper off, and then you have a nice clean backside. That did not sound right. Anyway, then I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I'm going to paint the back side of my sign and get that all nicely covered. And I'm just going to do one coat in this, and then I'll take the leftover paint that's still on my paintbrush, and I'm just going to go over my terracotta pots so that mostly what you're going to see is that terracotta, but it's not going to be as orange. And this way it'll show up on our white board. So now I'm going to measure to see how far apart I want to place my pots. And if you do this project at home, I've already done the measurements for you, so it's 5 inches between each of those top holes. Now I'm going to take my drill and I'm going to make 2 little holes using the smallest drill bit I could find. And you could actually use a nail and just hammer these in, because this wood is not too thick, so you don't have to have a drill to do this project. So now I'm going to take my bracelets, and I'm using my Waverly chalk paint in ink, and I'm going to get those nice and black so that they resemble something like metal. And if you go back and kind of tap on them a little bit when they're still wet but mostly dry, you'll get that texture that looks uneven and bumpy. So now I'm going to take some scrap floral foam and cut those down to fit inside of my pots, and I'll glue them in so that they stay nice and secure. And then I'm going to take some Dollar Tree floral moss and glue that to the top of each of those pots. So it just so happens that Dollar Tree had 4 different shades of these lavender stems, so I'm going to go ahead and do an ombre effect, and I'll start with the darkest shade at the bottom and gradually move up to the lightest at the top. So now I'm going to use some scrap 1x2 wood that Michael J gets from Lowe's, and this is $3.01 for an 8-foot piece. And so I'm not even going to measure these. I'm just going to place it on my sign and see how long I need to make them. And you'll want to leave a gap at the top and the bottom so that your frame will be able to attach to your board. And then I'll stack one on top of the other so that I get the same size pieces, and my frame will be nice and even. So then I took my Waverly chalk paint in ink, and I'm going to paint all of my boards, and then once they dry, I'm going to use my sanding block and sandpaper and get that all nicely distressed. I put a piece of paper down under that because it gets super messy and everything's going to be turning black from this dust. And then I'm going to take some wood glue and attach my pieces together, and then on the back side I'm going to use my Power Shot staple gun to attach them from the back. You could screw your frame together for some added security, but it's pretty secure just using the staples and wood glue, so that's just what I went with. And I have my Power Shot staple gun listed in my Amazon store, which is linked in the description box below. So now I'm going to take my board and place it onto the back of my frame, and then I used my staple gun again to get a couple of staples into the back side, but I was not a good shot, so this didn't work for me, but I did get a couple of them in there, but I ended up using some duct tape instead to secure the board to the back of the frame, and that seemed to work a lot better because I kept going through to the front of my sign, so I'm just not a good power shotter. So now I'm just going to take a chenille stem and cut it in half and then place it around my bracelet and then stick those into each of the holes that are in my board. And then I'll twist it on the back and those become our little pot hangers. And then I'm going to place my flower pots in each of those holders, going from darkest at the bottom to the lightest at the top. So for the top of my sign, I couldn't decide which font I wanted to use, so I cut out two different ones and then decided to use the one called the Skinny. And I'll have both of these available in my Etsy shop, and if you're a Patreon member in either the Dove's Nest or Sparrow's Nest, and you have a cutter, you'll have access to them for free. And I'll have our link to the Patreon page in the description box below if you want to help support our channel. And here it is, all finished, and oh my goodness, I love this so much. I think this is my favorite. I love how rustic and fun looking this is. It's so farmhouse, but springy, and obviously you can use any of your colors that you're using in your home decor and just change out the lavender for whatever color that might be. This is something you can use in every season, but I absolutely love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. I hope you enjoyed all of these projects, and if you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. If you're not already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button down below, as well as the little bell right next to it so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!